So I am so excited to have Ken Phillips here from Phillips Associates to talk with all of us about, quantifying your personal development and expertise. So kind of really continuing the conversation that Morgan started with. How do you even start talking about defining what you need to work on for yourself? And you're going to help us articulate that really well. And Ken has spent years working on measurement and evaluation, and is really a huge in our industry for measurement and evaluation. So Ken, I'm going to let you go ahead and take things away.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate all the positive comments. So hi everybody, and I'm glad you're here, and welcome to my session on quantifying personal development and expertise. As Jennifer indicated, this is really going to be a continuation of the session that Morgan just presented. And so where she was talking about identifying, your strengths and your weaknesses, and then turning maybe some of the weaknesses into development needs, and using the ATD capability model to do that. We're going to continue that gist of the conversation, but we're going to use a different model that some of you may or may not be familiar with. It's a model called the Johari window. The name Johari is the two psychologists that developed this model back, you can see at the bottom of the slide, in 1955. The name Johari is really a combination of the first names of the two developers of the model. So it's a combination of the Joseph and the Harrington. And the name window was chosen because the model looks like a window with four different window panes. And so that's the reason for the name, the Johari window. Also, it's been around, as I said, since 1955. It's been used in a variety of different contexts. And certainly when it was first developed, it was used in the around communication skills, and so that everybody has a Johari window like this that's unique to them, and have information in each one of these four quadrants, but since then it's also been used frequently by people in leadership training, where they will use the model to help leaders understand how they interact with their associates and the people that work with them. It's also used frequently in team building training, where they would have all the team members, intact team members, create windows like this for themselves and then share that and so on, using it as a team building exercise. Or it can be used for team leader training, again, in terms of looking at the four window frames, or the four window panes here. So let me just say a word about the model, so we're all on the same page here about how we can use this. So across the top of the model, you'll see that there's a self-awareness dimension, which is captured by the two columns that you see there: information that's known by yourself and information that's not known by yourself. So that's the self-awareness dimension. And it goes from, as you can see, from low to high. And then along the left-hand side of the column, or the y-axis of the column, is an authenticity dimension. And that's represented by the two categories you see there: information that's known to others, and then information that's not known by others. And then when you bring those four different elements together, then you're able to identify these four quadrants as part of the Johari window. So there's information. And let me just say the value in using this approach and looking at how you would put your strengths and weaknesses and development needs in here. The value that the window serves is it's really a helpful way to prepare you for job interviews, because you can kind of pull all this information together and prepare ahead of time. And as you're going to see here, what the goal is in doing all of this in combination with the kinds of things that Morgan talked about, we're going to talk about some other things here that you can do. What you're trying to do is expand that window pane where it's open self, where it's information that you're aware of, that you want, that you're willing to share with other people. So it's information that's known, your strengths, your weaknesses, things that perhaps you want to develop further, information that's known to you, and it's also known to others. So that's that window pane called the open self. Going down right below open self, we've got the window pane called hidden self. That's information that you know, but others don't know. And, and that does, and so there may be some information, for example, in the hidden self that is not, appropriate to share, or you don't want to share, certainly in a job interview. For example, if you've been arrested for, for drunken driving, or had a DUI conviction, unless you're interviewing for a delivery driver job, that's not information you want to be sharing in your job interview. But there might be other things down there that are important to share, because you've learned some things about yourself that that would impact your ability to perform a particular job really well. And so if the job requires these kinds of things, it would be appropriate to put those on the table and to talk about them. So there may be things in the hidden self, for example, where that you've never talked about, other people don't know about, but you know about, would be things like, maybe you have aspirations to become a CLO, and you've never said anything to anybody about that, but that would be your kind of long-term goal. And so you might, and that kind of thing, you might want to put up into the open self in a job interview when you're talking to someone about a learning and development position, because, it shows that you have a career path in mind and so on. Another thing that you might want to share in a job interview that might be in the hidden self is maybe you always wanted to be a stand-up comic, but you never told anybody that. But, that's part of your hidden self. Those are some things that you know about yourself, but other people don't know, but could have application in terms of a particular job, that might apply to a particular job. Going up to the upper right corner, we've got the blind self, and that's information that's known to others, but not known to you. So, based on your interactions with other people, people you work with, people you live with, they may see things about you, or see things in you that you don't see yourself. So you're blind to it, but they're aware of it. The best example here would be like an athletic coach, is coaching a bunch of athletes, and they see things in some of those athletes that they don't see in themselves, that they have a lot more potential than what they see in themselves. And so the coach's job is to try to bring that out of the person, and move it over into the open self, so that they also see that they have some real potential here. So that would be an example of the blind self. But there may be other things that, for example, that are negative. Let's say if you're involved in learning and development already, and you're doing a presentation, that there are things about the way you conduct that presentation. I mean, maybe you don't have eye-to-eye contact with the audience, or when you're doing a presentation, you tend to wander around a lot, and to a point where it becomes distracting. So that's information negative information that you may not know about yourself, but other people would know about you. So it would be good to get that information and move it over into the open self, so that, again, you could be more authentic about, the things that your strengths, your weaknesses, and also what things you want to develop. And we're going to talk about how you can do that here in a second. But let me just talk about the last quadrant here, down in the lower right, which is the unknown self. And so this is information about yourself that you don't know and that others don't know. And so you might say, well, how do you know there's anything in there? Well, I can give you an example. A number of years ago, I decided, and I'd been in training and development for a long time, but I wanted to be able to talk, more business kind of talk with executives that I was working with, and have a better understanding of accounting principles and practices and terms and all of that. So I decided that what I wanted to do was to take some accounting classes. So I have a community college that is very close to where I live. And so I went over there and I signed up for a couple of accounting classes, because I thought that would be really help my background and my financial understanding of organizations and all of that. And I discovered, after taking those accounting classes, that after the end of every class, my head hurt. And I knew at the end of the second class that I didn't want, there were more I could have taken, but I decided I was done. I'd had it. And that accounting was not something that was, going to be part of my career path. So that was before I took those classes, that was unknown to me. And it was unknown to anybody else. But once I had that experience of taking that class, it became known to me. And I was also more than willing to share that information with other people about, what I learned about myself. So it moved from the unknown self up into the open self. So those are the four window panes. And so let's talk next about how you can move information from the blind self to the open self, the unknown self to the open self, and be more comfortable with sharing things that are part of your hidden self. So here's the same model, and now we're going to just talk about some ways that you can move information here. So we've got 3 different things I want to talk about. One is you can move information from the blind self to the open self. So you can begin to enlarge that open self window pane by doing 2 things. One is asking for feedback. So certainly if you have people that you've worked with, it would be and that know you, and there's a fair amount of trust between you. You can go ask for feedback. What kinds of things do you see that I do well? What kinds of things don't I do very well? What kind of things do I need to improve on? So you can get feedback from people that you work with, and know about your strengths, your weaknesses, and things that, you may decide that when there's weaknesses that you may want to try to develop those, but you would obviously have that option. Now, the other thing, in addition to feedback, because feedback is great. And that's what a lot of what Morgan was just talked about, how you can get information and look at what the self is using, that the knowledge check item that our product that ATD developed along with the capability model. Another thing about feedback is that while it's helpful, oftentimes it's not real specific. And so while you may learn that you've got good communication skills, or you've got good listening skills, or you're really good at project management, or you're really good at facilitating, or whatever it is, whatever the feedback might have been that you weren't aware of, it tends to be non-specific. So the use of self-assessments, which is going to be the second half of this presentation, is I'm going to talk about how you can use self-assessments to get at more specific, granular information. So, for example, you might take a self-assessment around communication skills, and you might, through that self-assessment, learn that, that you got in the feedback that you were a good communicator, but you might learn more specific information around, what happens was you use lots of open-ended questions during conversations, or that you maintain appropriate eye contact with the other person, or you don't interrupt the other person. So there's more granular information about that strength, which when you get into an interview, you can share, with the interviewer and talk about not only a strength, that you see a strength that you have as communication skills, but you even went a step further and took some self-assessment so that you got some more specific information. And what you found that you really did well was, A, B, C, and D. And so that's going to impress most interviewers with the fact that you not only know your strengths, but you got some more specific information about it. So we'll say more about the self-assessments here in a minute. Now, you can move information from the unknown self into the open self by seeking out new experiences. For example, when I took that accounting class, that was a new experience. Or maybe you decided that you, wanted to start using, storytelling or something like that, and but you didn't know anything about that. So you either take a class or you do something to learn how to tell stories in conjunction with learning. So you're moving information that was unknown to you into the open self.
Hello.
Yes?
I'm not sure. We're getting a little bit of feedback. So and I'm not sure where that's coming from, but Ken, while we work on that, I do have a question for you, since I've now interrupted you. We did have a question from one of our participants. She says, I can see this tool being used both individually and departmentally. As an L&D rookie, how would one effectively use this tool departmentally and or organizationally?
How would you use it individually or organizationally? Is that what
departmentally or organizationally?
Well, it's not. It's a model that's not really necessarily designed for use at that level. It's much more of an interpersonal model, and so the way that it has been used in like leader training, or it's been used in team building, would be for everyone, to kind of make a list of what things go in each one of these boxes, and other than the unknown self, because you wouldn't know that. But then to sit and then together, share what kinds of things you've come up with. And so you're doing it not only about yourself, but you're doing it about your colleagues. And so they use the model that way as a development tool. So you could use it that way as a team building tool, or, improving leadership skills as well, where, there's things about yourself as a leader, but stuff that, you're blind to, stuff that about that you're not doing very well as a leader, that's in the hidden category that you might want to, move up into the open category. And then there's probably some unknown stuff as well.
Yeah. Okay. And I know that we did start a few minutes late, Ken, and I have to, I know it's going to start yelling at us to say, hey, you've gone over time.
Okay.
Is there anything specific that you would like to leave folks with? And can they get access to, do you have some materials that we could maybe share with them?
Sure. Let me get through this. These are some benefits of the self-assessment. So let me just get through these.
Yeah.
But here's where, and in the interest of self-disclosure, it's important that you understand this company has published a bunch of self-assessment instruments that I had created, but they've also got many others. And what I found really compelling about the kinds of assessment instruments they have is that they connect directly with many of the elements underneath the three areas on the capability model. So they've got, assessments on change management and critical awareness or cultural awareness and inclusion, emotional intelligence, communication, a bunch of things like that. So if those are areas that are important in your particular job or a job you aspire to get, then you could go there and take those self-assessment instruments and gain a lot of insight into your strengths, your weaknesses, and then things that you might want to develop. So there's also, there's other places where you can go, but the reason I mentioned the HRDQ store is because they've got, so many different ones, and you'll find, kind of one-off examples of other kinds of things like conflict resolution. There's a Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument, but that's all they have. They don't have other assessments. But what I liked about this was they had a whole bunch of different things, and many of them relate to these factors in the capability model.
That's great. And those are, validated assessments, not like take this quiz in a magazine. So that's helpful.
Yes, all of them will have normative data, so you're able to compare yourself to norms. A bunch of them are, designed so they control for socially desirable responses. And so, and then plus they all have background readings. So not only do you have an assessment, but then you get a fairly in-depth explanation of your scores and what the different things mean and all that kind of stuff. So they are valuable tools in terms of getting a really good handle on your strengths and weaknesses, and again, where you want to improve.
Yeah. Well, Ken, thank you very much. I know that there is lots more information that we can share about this. So hopefully, I don't know if you're able to stick around today, maybe join the table and chat with folks. But if not, if you have some information you want to share with me, I can make sure that we get it out to everybody.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Ken.